They want me to speak a little louder today because they said they couldn't hear me yesterday on the camera. Could you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe I should come closer to the, I don't know, is it okay?
Yeah.
I can bring a microphone later so that we can plug it in. But I'm so happy to see you all up early this morning. You all come in bright and early on a Sunday morning. It's wonderful to be here. And last night we had an interesting discussion on science and religion. And today, for most of today, and maybe all of today, I want to talk about what Elango has put in the program as the unfoldment of the divine plan. In order to do this, we need to talk about a whole bunch of different things. But I want to begin with this year's message from the Universal House of Justice that came at Rezvan. This year's Rezvan message of the Universal House of Justice began with a quotation from Baha'u'llah. The very first words of the message were a quotation from Baha'u'llah. And the House of Justice said that these words were, quote, a stirring pronouncement and spoke in exhilarating terms. And I was interested when this message came at Rezvan this year. I'm sure all of you read the message as well. I was interested that it began with a quotation from Baha'u'llah. And I wondered if the Universal House of Justice had ever began a message from them on Rezvan with a quotation. I didn't know if this happened because I couldn't remember. I know that sometimes maybe in the body of a message they had a little quotation, but to just start with a quotation from Baha'u'llah and say nothing, I thought this was interesting, so I decided to check. And I have on my computer all the Rezvan messages of the Universal House of Justice. So I looked at the year before last, there was no quotation at the beginning. I looked the year before that, there was no quotation. I looked the year before that, there was no quotation. And I kept checking backwards, until I got to the very first message of the Universal House of Justice, which was, of course, 50 messages ago. Because this year is the 50th anniversary of the House of Justice, and there were exactly 50 messages. And in none of the other messages, the other 49, did they begin with a quotation. It's the first time ever in 50 years that they began with a quotation. So I wondered, what was it about this quotation and this time that the Universal House of Justice decided to begin their message with a statement of Baha'u'llah, and what does it mean? Because when the head of our faith draws our attention to one particular statement of Baha'u'llah, and why did they choose it? Out of all of the 100 volumes of Baha'u'llah's writings, the Universal House of Justice has X, why did they choose this particular message and begin it? So I wondered about this so much that I decided to really read this message and understand it, to see why they pick it. Now, before I answer that question, I want to read you the statement that the House of Justice quotes from Baha'u'llah at the very beginning of this year's message. It says this: the book of God is wide open, and his word is summoning mankind unto him. Incline your ears, O friends of God, to the voice of him whom the world hath wronged, and hold fast unto whatsoever will exalt his cause. And then they further quote, with the utmost friendliness, and in a spirit of perfect fellowship, take ye counsel together, and dedicate the precious days of your lives to the betterment of the world, and the promotion of the cause of him who is the ancient and sovereign Lord of all. Him who is the ancient and sovereign Lord of all. So, why did they pick this statement of Baha'u'llah? Well, they answer it in the very next paragraph. They say this: beloved co-workers, this stirring pronouncement comes to mind unbidden when we see your consecrated efforts around the world in answer to the call of Baha'u'llah. Now, so they're saying that they see the Baha'is of the world doing certain things, and they are answering Baha'u'llah's call that is in this message. So for some reason, whatever is going on in the Baha'i world right now, the Baha'is are doing in the world, they, the House of Justice says, are answering a call that's in this statement. Okay, they say the splendid response to his summons can be witnessed on every side. So they say that there's a response to a call that they can see now throughout the world. And they say, to those who pause to reflect on the unfoldment of the divine plan, it becomes impossible to ignore how the power possessed by the Word of God is ascendant in the hearts of women and men, children and youth, in country after country, in cluster after cluster. And there we have the term, the unfoldment of the divine plan, which is the subject of our talk today. The House of Justice says, if we just stop and reflect on what the Baha'is are doing in the world, they are somehow answering a call of Baha'u'llah in response to an unfoldment of a particular plan. And then the House of Justice goes on to describe what the Baha'is are doing that are answering this call. And what they describe, of course, is the framework of action that we now call the 5-year plan. And we're going to discuss what that is. But the House of Justice has said that the framework of action is a landscape of unfolding processes, emerging structures, and enduring fellowship. In other words, there are 3 components to a landscape. First of all, the landscape itself is a very complex thing. If you look at a landscape, it has many features. And so to describe the 5-year plan, you have to understand it in terms of many features of a broad landscape. But the 3 things are that there are unfolding processes. Processes are certain things, methods or manners or ways in which things are carrying out, and they are unfolding. In other words, they're not existing, they're gradually coming into existence. 2, they say emerging structures. In other words, the administration of the faith, there are new structures that are emerging. They're not existent maybe at the beginning, and they're gradually emerging. And enduring fellowship, in other words, there's some kind of growth of love and harmony and unity amongst communities and individuals. This is a complex picture. And so the House of Justice says Baha'is around the world are trying to bring these 3 things into existence, and by doing so, they're answering the call of Baha'u'llah. Before I talk about these things, I want to first talk about this concept of answering a call. Answering a call, what does that mean? Because first of all, the House of Justice is saying there's a call being made. There's a call being made. And, you know, I was thinking, did I get that call? Did any of you get the call? You know, when somebody's getting a call, they're out the back saying, how come I didn't get the call? I mean, you want to get the call, isn't that right? And here the House of Justice is saying, throughout the world, there are certain people that are answering the call. So I immediately said, ooh, did I really get the call? And so it made me think about what is the nature of a call and a response. What is the exact nature? Because this is the framework or the terms in which the House of Justice is couching the world today. Now, when you get a call, when anybody asks you to do anything, it kind of puts you on the spot. Wouldn't you agree? When someone requests something of you, they ask you to do something, it challenges you in a way, because you have to do something, or not do something, but you have to respond in some way. You have to either do it or not do it. Wouldn't you agree? Now, there are several ways of responding to a call. The first way is to ignore it. Isn't that right? You can just ignore it. You could not agree to do it, or you cannot even hear it, or you cannot even understand it. So there are many levels of ignoring a call, but that is one way of responding to it. But you can hang up the phone. Has any of you ever hung up the phone with somebody? You can do that. So there are many levels of ignoring a call, but that is one way of responding to it. It's a response. The second way of responding to a call is to hear it and understand it, but then you still have 2 ways after understanding it. 1, you can agree to do the thing, and 2, you can agree not to do it. Isn't that right? Or you can decide to do it and decide not to. So you have 3 choices when a call is being made. You can ignore it, or not understand it. You can agree to do it, or you can agree not to it. But calls have to be answered. They have to be responded to in some way. A decision has to be made, and your life can greatly be affected by whichever decision you make, one way or the other. Let's think of a few examples of calls and responses. Imagine somebody asks you to marry them. Has this ever happened to any of you in this room? Or you ever made that call yourself? Hasn't happened? But imagine it happens. Okay, if someone asks you to marry them, you can't just ignore it. You can't, I think, will you marry me? You just walk away. You can't do that, right? You have to say yes or no. And you have to think about it. Whichever decision you make, yes or no, will affect the whole life after that. Isn't that right? So that's imagine someone calls to offer you a job or some other form of opportunity. Okay, you have to think about it, and you have to respond yes or no. And whether you respond, there may be many factors, where you live or what you do and how you spend your time. In other words, it is a challenge to get that kind of... Imagine you get a sales call. In this country, do people call you to sell you things on the telephone?
Yes.
They do? They do in America too. Do you like that? No. You don't like it? Who doesn't like it? Why not? It bothers you? But it forces you to make a decision, doesn't it? And you might have to be rude and say no, or you might have to listen. You might be busy, you might be watching your favorite television show. I don't know what you're doing, but you don't like it. But still, it requires some kind of response. Imagine someone asks you for help. If someone just asks you for help, you may not even like this, because it requires a decision of you. Maybe you don't want to do it, maybe because it's too much time or too much effort. Well, but maybe you don't want to say no either, because you don't want to be mean or cruel or pure. You see what I mean? So it can be inconvenient. Is that right? It can be inconvenient to get a call and response. And this is what's going on. So I thought about this. What is the nature of a call and response? Now, most people would think that a call and response is where you listen and then act. You listen to the call and then you act upon it, either to do it or not to do it. When I look at this statement of Baha'u'llah, I notice that there are 3 steps to his call. Let me read you the statement again. The 3 steps are to listen, consult, and act. Very interesting. Let me read it. The first step is to listen. He says, and I'm quoting again, "Incline your ears, O friends of God, to the voice of him whom the world hath wronged, and hold fast unto whatsoever will exalt his cause." So that is to listen. Incline your ears. So the first step we're going to have to do, according to Baha'u'llah, is listen to the call, to really understand what the call is. And that's step 1. Step 2, he says, "With the utmost friendliness and in a spirit of perfect fellowship, take ye counsel together." So now the second step is not to listen and then go out and act on your own. It's to listen and go and consult with others before acting. And don't just consult in the way you want to consult, but consult with the utmost friendliness and a spirit of perfect fellowship. So there's some power that will be released if you consult in this manner. And the third is to act. He says, "And dedicate the precious days of your lives to the betterment of the world and the promotion of the cause of him who is the ancient and sovereign Lord of all." He's saying that your life, the days of your life, are precious. And you need to dedicate that precious days of your life to the betterment of the world after listening to his call, consulting with love and fellowship, then dedicate the precious days of your life. Now, if you look up the word call in the Baha'i writings, you'll find in Gleanings that Baha'u'llah says the call that God is making to mankind in this day is different to the call that God made to mankind in the past, through Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Muhammad and so on. There's a difference about this call. Do you know what that difference is? It's interesting. I'm going to read it to you. Baha'u'llah says about the call in this day, he says, "Behold how the manifold grace of God, which is being showered from the clouds of divine glory, hath in this day encompassed the world. For whereas in days past every lover besought and searched after his beloved, it is the beloved himself who is now calling his lovers and is inviting them to attain his presence. Take heed lest ye forfeit so precious a favor. Beware lest ye belittle so remarkable a token of his grace." So he's saying, basically, who's calling who? That's really what he said, who's calling who. In the past, everybody had to call to God. You know, they had to seek out God. Seek and ye shall find. In other words, we had to do the seeking and then we found it. In this day, he says, God is the seeker seeking us and making the call to us. This is different. Now, who's calling who? That makes a big difference. Imagine if you love somebody and you call them all the time. Has this ever happened to you? You call them. Okay. And maybe, you know, you get somewhere, maybe you don't. But maybe one day the phone rings and you answer the phone and it's that person. They're calling you. Is that a different dynamic? It feels different because they're calling you. Imagine you're applying for a job and you send your resume to companies. You say, I want a job, I do this, I do that. And that has a certain feel to it. One day, maybe the phone rings and it's the boss of the company calling you. Does that feel different? Is it a different dynamic? Baha'u'llah says that's what's going on right now. The call has come in this day, and it's come to you. The call has come to you. And he says, this is a precious favor. He says, take heed lest ye forfeit so precious a favor. Now, the most important thing is to remember that you've got a call. You've got mail. You know, you never ever have AOL in this country? Remember when we first got AOL? It was a long time ago. Right? You push a button, you've got mail. Didn't it feel good to get that little message? You really liked it, didn't you? Well, there's a message waiting for you. If you check your answering machine or your voicemail or your email, you'll see that there's a message there from the Howl, according to the House of Justice. The phone rings, it's for you. So go back and check your messages. First of all, how many of you in this room, when this talk is over, are you going to check your voicemail or your email? Who's going to check it after? You are? Okay. How many of you are going to check your email or your voice messages during this talk? No? I tell you, many times I talk and I'm going to speak, people are checking. Because in this day and age, we all like to get our messages, don't we? We're always checking. You see on the street, people are checking their email. We live in a world where people like to get messages. We like to get them and check them. Of course, they could be very important. There could be time sensitive and so on. So it's very important that we get a message. And the House of Justice is saying that today there is a call being made to every one of you here in this room. So I want to figure out exactly what are the steps required to receive a message and to respond to it. What are the dynamics of a call and response? So imagine a call comes in. Let's take Elango here. Let's say that Elango gets a call. Okay. And if Elango gets a call from someone he doesn't know who it is, he's never heard them before, what are the steps of a call and response? Where does it go from the time that call comes in to the time Elango makes a response? And I analyzed it and I worked out there's really 9 steps. 9 steps. There's 8 things that must happen, and then the 9th step is a decision must be made. So let's say the call comes into Elango. Hello, he doesn't recognize the voice. What do you think is the first step? What is the first thing Elango is going to ask? Who's calling?
Who's calling?
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Who's calling? So Elango says, who's calling? He looks at the caller ID, and it says, the twigs of the tree of eternity, or it says, out of this world. You know, he doesn't recognize it, okay? So he says, who's calling? Okay, so that's the first question we need to get the answer to. Who is calling? Who is Howl? Second question that Elango is probably going to ask is, where are you calling from? Isn't that right? Where are you calling from? Now, a very polite person will usually identify those 2 things. They say, this is so-and-so, and I'm calling from so-and-so. Isn't that right? They'll say those 2 things, because those are the 2 things you want to know. Who's calling, and where are you calling from? And in this case, the answer is quite amazing that Howl says to Elango. The third question Elango is probably going to ask is, why are you calling? Isn't that right? Why are you calling? Because he wants to know, right? Now, maybe by this stage, Elango has already hung up the phone. Is that right? Maybe he's already, because have you ever done that to someone you just don't want to answer, you just hang up? Has anyone done that? Or is everybody polite in Singapore? In America, people aren't so polite. We don't like it when people bother us. I remember there's a comedian, Woody Allen. I don't know if you know him. And he said that he was sitting down to eat dinner, just made his dinner, and before he took the first bite, the doorbell rang. And so he went to the door, and someone at the door said, "Brother, hast thou seen thy Lord thy God? Art thou saying, hast thou?" Something like that. And Woody Allen said, he said, not only was he talking in a language that no one has spoken of in 2,000 years. Like, okay. He said, not only is he interrupting my dinner, but he's talking in a language that no one has spoken of in 2,000 years. So Woody Allen said, I said unto him. He said, I said unto him, be fruitful and multiply. But not exactly in those words. And so basically what he was saying is, he was telling him to, it was very rude. Okay. But this is, everybody laughs in America when we hear that, because we hate being interrupted. We're eating our dinner, or we're watching a TV or something, and we're being called. So that's the next question Elango's going to say, why are you calling? The next question is, why are you calling now? Okay? Why are you calling now? What's the reason? These are just natural questions. If you don't have the answer to these questions, you're not going to proceed. The 5th question is, why are you calling me? Why are you calling me? Elango's going to ask that question, why are you calling me? He may say, how did you get my number? How did you get my number? And maybe he says, well, I have friends in high places, or, he says something. Elango says, whoa, I don't know. But why are you calling me? How did you get my number? And if you get that far, if Elango still hasn't hung up the phone, he's going to say, well, what are you asking me to do? Get to the point. What exactly are you asking me to do? because, and you think they're going to sell you something, we'll get to the point, what are you going to do? They never tell you too soon, right? What are you asking me to do? If you get the answer to that sixth question, the very next question Elango is going to ask, either to himself or the person, is, am I able to do it? Can I do the thing that he's asking me to do? Am I able to? Maybe it's, if it costs money, can I afford it? If it asks me to do something, am I able to? Do I have the ability to do whatever is going to be asked? Because that's a natural thing. I can't do it if I can't, unless I know what it is. But then once I know what it is, am I able to do it? So, what are you asking me to do? Can I do it is the seventh question. The eighth question is the one that's most important to Elango. The eighth question. And that is, what's in it for me? You know, what do I get out of it? What benefit is it to me? Because you're always going to, in other words, what will happen to me if I do it? What will happen to me if I don't do it? In other words, I have to think about what is it that's a benefit to me or not. Isn't that right, Elango? Don't you want to know what's in it for you? Now, if you get the answer to those 8 questions, I'll read them again. Who's calling? Where are you calling from? Why are you calling? Why are you calling now? Why are you calling me? What exactly are you asking me to do? Can I do it? And what's in it for me? If you get those answers, then you can go to step 9, which is you can make a decision. You can decide either to do it or not to do it, if you've made it that far in the phone call. So in this talk, and maybe a little later today or tomorrow, I want to see if we can answer all of these questions. Because the House of Justice said there's a call coming in. You check your messages, a call coming in. Elango has already got the call, and probably the roaming charges on your phone are huge because it's coming from a long distance. But there's a call coming in, and we need to get the answer to this. So let's begin with the first question. Who's calling? Now, if Elango says, who's calling, and he says, I'm a manifestation of God, Elango's a little confused. Would you agree? Because what is a manifestation of God? Well, first of all, we have to begin with the concept of the unknowable God, that God is unknowable. We can't really know God. And it really is a mystery. We're told in the Baha'i writings that God is so exalted and so beyond the conception of man. But then, if he's beyond the conception of man, how do we know man? So imagine there's a painting here on the wall, and someone made a painting. Say a painter comes and paints a beautiful painting. And now, after painting the painter wants the painting to know him. How is that going to work? How can a painter paint something and then say, I want that painting to know me? It seems impossible, isn't that right? But to make it possible, 2 things are going to happen. 2 things. First of all, the painter is going to have to jump inside the painting. Okay? The painter is somehow going to have to jump inside the painting. That's one thing. The second thing is, he's going to have to give the painting consciousness or ability to know. He's going to have to bestow upon the painting some consciousness or ability to know. Both of those things seem equally impossible. Would you agree? They both seem equally impossible. And we're told that God does these 2 things. Somehow he jumps into the painting, and he gives the painting consciousness to know him. And the act of doing that causes the creation itself. It brings the letters B and E together. In other words, it creates creation. It's the act of creation. This is what the manifestation of God does. He brings the unknowable into the knowledge of human beings. In the Baha'i writings, there are several symbols that were given to represent the manifestation of God. The first is a day star. The day star is a common term that's been put in the Baha'i writings. A day star, does everyone know what a day star is? It's what we call the morning star. If you go out just before dawn, when it's the darkest, whatever time that is, 4 or 5 in the morning, when it's completely dark on Earth, if you look in the eastern sky, on the horizon, suddenly a star gets very, very bright. Very bright. In fact, it's the brightest thing in the night sky next to the moon. And it's usually the planet Venus. Sometimes it's another planet, depending on what's east. But it's whatever is east, because here's the Earth here. The sun is coming around. Is that the east? Where's east in your direction? Is it over here? Okay. So the sun is coming around to the east, and it's dark up here, right? Now, when it's dark up here, if there's anything in the sky over here, like over here, as the sun comes around, even when it's dark here, suddenly something goes bright. Okay? Something goes bright. That's called the day star or the morning star. And for thousands of years, humans relied upon the day star to tell them certain things. First of all, they knew where east was. Because in the old days, when you didn't have compasses and stuff, suddenly something goes bright, and that's east. Because the sun is very reliable, always goes around east. Secondly, whenever you saw the day star, it announced the near coming of the sun. Like dawn was not too far off. Okay, so these are two things that we know. But basically, the day star brings you light of something that is inaccessible, because the sun is not accessible yet, and the day star brings you, and the light of the day star is the light of the sun, but it's inaccessible. So the manifestation of God is like that. He announces the coming of God, or the nearness of God, but he also brings something that's inaccessible to you and makes it accessible. So this is why often it's called the day star of truth, the day star of God. And you'll see the word day star all over, and it's a very important concept. Maybe in the modern world, when we have lights and compasses and stuff, we don't realize how powerful this symbol is. Another symbol, we're told, represents the manifestation of God is a tree. A tree, often used in the Baha'is. For example, he is the tree of life that bringeth forth the fruits of God. You know, that's in the tablet of Ahmad. How many of you have eaten soil or dirt? Who has recently eaten soil or dirt? Anybody? Why not? Why don't you eat soil or dirt? Anyone can tell me why? Because there's no value to it. You don't get it. Now, soil and dirt, soil has minerals and nutrients. In fact, all the plants and animals, but why is it that we don't eat the soil or dirt? Because the minerals in soil are of no benefit to our body. We cannot absorb them. They have the wrong electrical polarity, if you want to know the scientific reason. So if you eat soil, you're going to die. You're not going to get any benefit. But what does the tree do, or any plant do? It takes the inaccessible nutrients from the soil and converts them into a fruit that we can partake of and that we can benefit from. You see, it takes the inaccessible minerals in the soil to us, converts them into something that is consumable by us. And this is what the manifestation of God does. He takes the inaccessible God, converts it into a fruit that then we can eat. And what is a fruit? It's tasty, it's delicious, it's attractive, it's fragrant, it's nourishing. Isn't that right? And all food is that way. So all plants are a medium between the inaccessible soil and us. They're a medium that takes something and turns. So this is why often he's referred to as a tree, or a tree of life, or a nisa, a tree beyond which there's no passing. Another symbol for the manifestation of God is a mirror. This is often used. A mirror is another symbol. Now, a mirror is a very interesting thing, because if you have a perfect mirror and you look into it, it looks like you're looking at the thing. Okay, so if there's a sun up there and the mirror is perfect, you look at the mirror and you see the sun in it, it's just as good as seeing the real sun. Now, in essence, it's not the sun if you hold it or touch it, but you might as well be looking at the sun, because a mirror has the power of perfectly reflecting something. I had a friend of mine who was an identical twin. His brother looked exactly the same as him. And he went to a movie theater in Australia, where he came out of the movie theater and there were big steps, hundreds of people coming down, and then there was a landing area, and the whole wall was a mirror. You know how you ever seen that? The whole wall was a mirror, and then it turns around and goes down. So he comes out of the movie theater, several hundred people are behind him. He sees his reflection walking towards him in the mirror. He thinks it's his brother. So he goes up to the mirror and says, Barry, what are you doing there? And hugs himself in the mirror and crashes his head and smashes his nose. And everybody's looking at him thinking, what an idiot you are to talk to yourself and crash into the mirror. But because he had an identical twin, he thought it was his brother coming. And it shows you how powerful a mirror is. That it's just like looking at something. Do you know that before photography, if mirrors didn't exist, or reflection in anything, you wouldn't know what you look like. You would never know what you look like, because where your eyes are looking. And we also cannot know what God is like, or He looks like, without these divine mirrors of the manifestations of God. And so Baha'u'llah says, in many tablets, he says, for example, "Naught is seen in my temple but the temple of God, and in my beauty but his beauty, and in my being but his beauty in being," and so on. He goes on and on. The manifestation of God is the ability to take the unknown and make it known, just like that painter somehow gets to know the painter. So this is a very important thing. So Elango is saying, okay, that's the manifestation of God, but I don't even know who God is. Who is God? Okay, because Elango is a little concerned. And there are many people in the world that don't believe in God. Isn't that right? They don't believe in God, they don't see Him, and so on. Now, you're not going to ever know God unless you look into the mirror of the manifestation, but I think it's very interesting. When I was in Los Angeles, or actually Nashville not too long ago, I was at a Baha'i meeting where there were many tables, and there was lots of Persians eating there. And there was one chair left, and I took my food, and I said, "Can I sit here?" And one of the Persians pointed and said, "Ya Khuda." Did anyone hear Persian? Yes. They said, "Ya Khuda." And because I said, "Can I sit there?" And I said, "What does that mean, Ya Khuda?" They said, "Oh, we just say it, because you can sit there. It's fine, okay?" And I said, "Well, does the Khuda mean God?" Because I knew that Khuda meant God. And the Persian there said, "Yes, I think it means God." But there was another Persian at the table who said, "No, it doesn't mean God, it means something else." And they started to argue. We were arguing, but I know it's unusual. Two Persians arguing never happened before, but this time it did. Okay. So they said, "Ya Khuda." And so I said, it's very interesting, because in English we also have many words that have God in them, and we don't remember that God is part of it. For example, we say goodbye. You know that goodbye originally was "God be with you." That's originally where it came from. He said. But when we say goodbye now, we don't think of God. We just say goodbye. Get out of here. Get out of my face. We're just thinking of that person going. There's no God in our mind when we say goodbye, right? Or if we say enthusiasm or enthusiastic, any English word that has "thu" or "theo" means God. So enthusiasm originally meant God within. If someone's enthusiastic, they have God within them. But when we say they have enthusiasm, we don't think they have God inside them. And many, many other words like this. So we say these things, but God no longer is in our mind. There's a particular Persian phrase, since we have a Persian friend here, that I always thought meant no. I thought it meant no. The actual phrase is inshallah. And the reason I thought it meant no is that whenever I asked a Persian if they were going to do something or be somewhere, if they said inshallah, they often weren't there. They didn't do it. And then later on, I found out that it actually means God willing, or God, God willing. So I realized that if a Persian really is going to do something or be somewhere, they will tell you yes. But if they don't want to do it, they blame it on God.
Not the Persians in Singapore.
So I realized that we don't really have a concept that God is around us, He's existing, He's here now in this room. We don't have this concept. Now when we read the old religious scriptures of the Old Testament, God seems to be interacting in human affairs all the time. When you read it, God comes down and He smites these people and He raises up these people and He does. You notice God is always acting in the world? We don't have that concept today. That God is interacting within the affairs of humankind today, because we're not aware of like a present personal God. There's a term used for this, the appearance or the manifestation of God within the world, that He does something or He has control over things. It's called theophany. A theophany, anything that has phany at the end, like epiphany and so on, it's the conception or the realization or the consciousness of something. And theophany is the consciousness of God existing in the world. And Shoghi Effendi was not shy about using the term theophany. If you read in Shoghi Effendi's writings, he refers to the appearance of Baha'u'llah as a theophany. It's actually, even the book, God Passes By, the title of that book, God Passes By, is a very interesting title. When I first saw it, the hero of the book is not Baha'u'llah or the Bab or the Baha'is. The actual hero of the book is God. The book is God Passes By. And in many languages, they find it even hard to translate that. Because people say, what do you mean God passes by? Where did He go? But Shoghi Effendi used that term because it's a concept of theophany, that God exists in the world and He's here now. Right now, He exists and He's doing things. So this whole concept that there's an unknowable God and He's made known, He lives in our lives, is a very important concept. Now, we need to be concerned about three futures. Three futures. In other words, we all have to be future looking, and most of you are future looking in various ways. I mean, you might get education, or education for your children, you might save money. In other words, you're concerned about your future. But there are actually 3 different futures that Baha'is are supposed to be concerned about. The first future that you have to be concerned about is the future of your physical body. You need to take care of it, you need to keep it alive, you need to do things that won't hurt it. Is that right? How many of you take care of your physical body? You must have, because you're alive. And all animals also, you notice they take care of their body too. And they fly north, they fly south, they go to the water, they get food. In other words, they take care of their physical body, and we need to do that. Some people need to do a little more of it, perhaps, but I'm not going to go into that. But we need to look after our body. There's something else that we need to look after. And what is that? That's our spirit or our soul, which is our spiritual body. And we need to be concerned with that future as well. And in some passages, Baha'u'llah says that there is a comparison. So he compares the life of the physical body to the life of the soul. We can look at that in a moment. And one must also be concerned with their soul. There is a third life form that has a future, a past and a future, that we also need to be concerned with, and it is also a life form. What is that? Who can tell me what the third life form is? I'm sorry? Sorry?
The life after death.
No, the life after death is part of the soul. Because life after death is the life of the soul. In other words, the body only has about 60, 70, 80, 90 years. The soul has a much longer time. Both of them have a future. The soul is a longer future we're concerned with. There's another life form that we're told we also must be concerned with. What is that?
To be
I'm sorry?
relationships or
It's close. It's civilization. Humanity itself is a life form. Many times Baha'u'llah compares the world of humanity to a single human being. For example, in his message to Queen Victoria, he said, regard the world as a human body. Regard the world as a human body. In other words, and we know that even our human body is a collection of life forms. I don't know if you know this. Your body is not one life form. Your body is a collection of life forms. Do you know how many life forms are in your body?
Yeah.
Who knows? Anyone counted?
No.
How many life forms are in your body, Micah? You don't know that? Well, they're only trying to figure it out today. In 2012, just a year ago, some 200 researchers from 80 institutions started the it's called Human Microbiome Project. And they're trying to figure out all the life that lives in a human body, because the human body is really a collection of life. But basically, they're microorganisms. But they're independent of you. They can go out and go somewhere else. And they found that there are between 500 to 1,000 species of bacteria just in your gut.
In your gut.
Just in your gut. 500 to 1,000 species. Not 500,000 bacteria. Species. You understand that? Okay. Can you name me 500 species of animals? Who can name me 500 species of animals?
Species.
Species. They're in your gut.